Welcome to my bed with a cup of coffee. It's Saturday morning. It's a very sunny and lovely day, and I just want to sit down with you and talk about some of the books I read recently in January and February, because I haven't done a monthly reading wrap-up video in so long, and I kind of miss it. I stopped doing those because I just got really busy and stressed all the time, and I was only reading 1 or 2 books per month, and I just didn't really feel like doing it, because on this channel I only do videos that I want to do. Unless it's ASMR, I will take requests, and I'll still just do the ones I want to do, but I feel like I haven't talked directly to the camera as myself since my January 1st vlog, because then I just started doing ASMR and videos about my cat that came home with me from the woods. But recently I have been reading some really good books, and I started getting back into audiobooks, so I've been able to read a lot more. So I'm going to talk about them. I only have 3 of them physically, because as you know, I mostly read ebooks because I can't afford to buy every book that I want to read. Okay, so starting off, we have Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I gave this book 3.5 stars, and I'm gonna try to not talk for too long about each book because I'm so bad at summarizing books. But this one is a romance, it's a fantasy, it's set in another world, and it's about 2 people who, it's marketed as enemies to lovers, but it's not really. They were just kind of rivals at work competing for the same promotion. It's a time of war. There's these 2 gods that have been fighting for centuries. But anyways, these 2 people fall in love, writing to each other through their typewriters that are somehow magically sending these letters to each other, and then they fall in love, and they're both falling in love. Well, one of them, the girl, is falling in love anonymously, like she doesn't know who she's talking to. She just really feels like this person really truly understands her. But the guy knows from the beginning who she is. That's all I'm gonna say. But I gave it 3.5 stars because the way they fell in love really just reminds me of me and my significant other, and it was just something so deeply resonating with that part of the story. And then next I read Neferura, which was an ARC that I got from NetGalley, and it was also a DNF, and I gave it 1 star because it's a book about Neferura, who was a powerful priestess in ancient Egypt, and her story is kind of overlooked in history. So I was really excited about this because it's a retelling, but I had to DNF at 28% because the writing was so bad. It was giving Wattpad, which happens with a lot of ARCs I get from NetGalley, I'm realizing. So what I did like about it though was the thorough historical research, because the author is an Egyptologist, and I like the little details on temple rituals sprinkled throughout and the visual imagery. I'm looking at my Goodreads review, by the way, but what I disliked was the middle grade / young adult writing style, even though it's categorized as adult. Like if I'm going into a book knowing it's YA, then it's fine, but this was categorized as adult. The one-dimensional characters and the info dump through dialogue. A bit of a disappointing arc. And I read The Nutcracker and the Mouse King through audiobook, and I gave this 3 stars. One of my goals this year was to read more short stories, and somebody on bookstagram recommended this to me, and I never considered reading it. The only thing I knew about The Nutcracker was from the Barbie movie that I watched as a kid, but it was just very enjoyable. It's like magical realism. I liked that I listened to it through audiobook because it made me feel like I was a kid again, like listening to my teacher read a book. So I like that. And then I read The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, which is another short story. I have wanted to read more Shirley Jackson since I read her book called We Have Always Lived in a Castle back in fall 2022. I just love her gothic and kind of weird storytelling and writing style. And this was 4 stars. I also listened to it on audiobook. I found a free YouTube video. Like, all the audiobooks I listen to are free. There's so many resources online. I love the juxtaposition of, like, everything is described as just a regular day in this small town and very peaceful, but you get this sense of something's very wrong throughout the whole story. It's just amazing. It's really a story that reflects humanity. So I find that funny because when Shirley Jackson first published the short story, it got so much criticism. It was very controversial. I think she even got like death threats or something. I could be making this up. I don't remember. Don't quote me on that. But I just find it really funny because it literally reflects how humanity is. So go read it if you want to read more Shirley Jackson because she's so cool. And next up, I read The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which is by Anne Bronte. This was on my fall TBR, but I started it in December and didn't finish it until almost February. I gave this 3 stars. I haven't written a review for it yet, but I will. I was initially intrigued by this book because it is by Anne Bronte, who is one of the Bronte sisters, and I haven't read any of her works yet. She is like the lesser talked about Bronte sister, and I wondered why, because the gothic novel drew me in. It's about this young widow who goes to live in Wildfell Hall in this small countryside rural town, and everybody's like, who is this woman? What happened to her? Why is she living alone with her son? Like, she must be an adulterer. She must be this, bad woman, because that's what people always said about women who did not live within the confines of, what's right for a woman in society. And I did like the first 100 pages of the novel because it's told through the perspective of Gilbert Markham, who is this young man that completely and utterly falls in love with her, and he's so dramatic. Like, I'm gonna do a video where I read some of the dramatic parts from his POV because it was so funny. But then midway through, Anne Bronte chooses to tell her story by making her character give Gilbert her journal to read, and then the rest of the book is just her journal about her previous abusive husband, which must have been very interesting and shocking and eye-opening to read at the time, but now it's just like, it was a bit of a bore. This book could have been a lot shorter, but I still had to give it 3 stars because I thoroughly enjoyed Gilbert's POV and how dramatic he is. He's a dramatic king. Okay, and then I read Ruthless Vows, which is the sequel to Divine Rivals. I gave it 3 stars. It's just a continuation of the events that happened in Divine Rivals. I did enjoy it, but I liked Divine Rivals a lot better. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Then I reread The Secret History This was my 5th time reading it, and so this time I chose to consume it through a different medium, which was audiobook, which Donna Tartt actually narrated herself. And you can find all the free parts of the audiobook on YouTube. So I listened to that, and her narration is so good. Truly, if you want to reread The Secret History, or if you haven't read it and you like listening to audiobooks and you feel like you're hesitant to physically read this 500, 600 page novel, maybe go try out the audiobook, because it's just amazing. This is one of my favorite books. It made such a huge impact on my life when I first read it. It made me realize that I really truly want to be a writer. So just in one sentence, because you've probably seen this book a million times everywhere if you're in the bookish sphere online. So in one sentence, this is about a group of college kids who are into ancient Greek. They can all speak it. They do everything for the aesthetic. Also, you find out at the beginning of the book that one of them died. Not a spoiler. It's literally on the first page. Okay. Then I read The Yellow Wallpaper, which is another short story via audiobook. It's by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I gave it 5 stars. It's about a woman who slowly descends into madness because of something that a doctor prescribed her called the rest cure, which was commonly prescribed to people who had these nervous conditions. It's really a foundational feminist story. I will actually be rereading it this month in March for me and my friends' book club, which we started at the end of January. This is our March pick, so if you want to join our book club, the link is in the description box. It's called the Tender Philosophia Book Club. I hope to see you there on Substack. Next up, I read The Awakening, which is by Kate Chopin, or Chopin. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, but the more I think about it, the more I think it should be a 5 stars, so I think I'm going to change that. I also listened to the audiobook, a free one I found on YouTube. It was so good. It's about this, it was published in 1899, I think, and it's about this woman who's married and has kids who suddenly spiritually awakens from her life and realizes that the things she has aren't the things she wants. She wants to do her own thing. This book actually ruined Kate Chopin's career, because God forbid a woman want to do whatever she wants to do with her life. God forbid a woman have her own thoughts and opinions and desire. And that's the thing that I love so much about this book. This was published in 1899, and it's the first classic I have ever read that, like, from that time, that openly and directly addresses desire, like sexual desire. And I think that's what shocked people the most, like this woman having desire. I just love it. I want to get the physical book one day and just annotate the hell out of it. There's so much to unpack. I love the metaphor of the sea and the moon throughout the book. I could just go on and on about it. Next up, I read Letters to a Young Poet. This was a reread as well. It's by Rainer Maria Rilke. This is just a collection of letters that he wrote to this young creative man called Mr. Capus. So this is his letters. 5 stars, of course. This was the February book for the Tender Philosophia book club. I loved discussing it and writing a review for it, which will be up soon on Substack. This has made a profound impact on my life since the first time I read it. It's such a comforting read. I will always come back to it, and I really recommend it to anyone who is a creative person, regardless of if you're a writer or poet. And if you love solitude, read this book. Second to last one is Rouge, which I read on my phone. I read an EPUB. 3 stars. This was Mona Awad's highly anticipated novel from last year, which I didn't get to until last month. I really want to do an ASMR video where I'm one of the weird people at the culty spa in it. I will be posting my review on Instagram soon. But how to describe this? This book is a fever dream. It is a commentary on the toxicity of the beauty industry, growing up biracial, and complicated relationships between mother and daughter. Reading this book, I did not know what was real and what wasn't. A lot of the time, I definitely liked her book Bunny better, but this, the vibes, the aesthetic, loved. And then lastly, I read a short story called The Canterville Ghost. Actually also listened to it. It's by Oscar Wilde. 4 stars from me. It's about this American political family that buys a huge estate, like a mansion in England, and there's a ghost in it. Before the owner sells it to them, he tells them, like, I feel I am responsible for telling you that there's a ghost who lives in this mansion, and he's been haunting members of my family for several years, so you should know that. And the family was like, do we look like we care? So they moved in, and of course the ghost starts haunting them. But I thought this book was so funny. Actually, it's not a horror book at all. It does have gothic elements to it, but ultimately I think this book is a comedy because this American family kills the 300-year-old British ghost with capitalism because they keep trying to sell him this detergent that they have. It's very much a commentary on capitalism that I found very funny. I love Oscar Wilde for that. But that is all the books I read in the last 2 months. I hope you enjoyed this little chat. I've been rambling on for so long now, so I will see you very soon in a new vlog, I think. Bye!